Stan, there are reports of thousands of UFOs being seen, specifically in the month of April. Well over 1,000 reports that came in. So the phenomenon is real, burgeoning, not going away. What are your thoughts? What is? I mean, is this? Are these visitors from Zeta Reticuli, or are they interdimensional beings? Let's start there.
Well, first of all, I did hear part of an interview last night with a fellow from MUFON who was saying that the increase in sightings is like not only 1,000 here, but worldwide in 39 locations they have branches. It's just gone skyrocketing this year.
Yeah.
Um, and that, fits in with what I expected. I do think that the majority of the sightings we've had in ancient history, say before 1945, that's ancient, that the sightings we've had before then were not man-made. Uh, Certainly in 1895 in Texas, that wasn't man-made, and back in the Greeks' time, and in the Egyptian records, and all these things are old, and those are not man-made. Now, where are they from? Well, those, I think, are what the ancient historians in Samaria and in Israel recorded as fallen ones, the fallen angels, fallen messengers, and I think they came through a parallel universe gateway. I do think that the Tower of Babel was Babel, the gateway to the gods, and that's one of the reasons they destroyed it, is because it would have allowed Nimrod and those who followed in those days to actually gate through into the parallel universe where these beings come from. Now, if they come from a star system out there, Zeta Reticuli or the Pleiadian group or whatever, it might be they were out there doing something before they came back here to the gateway. But I think that and I don't think this is egocentric to humanity, but I do think that the Earth, at this point in time, is the focal point for a massive resolution of a conflict in the parallel universe, a
Mm-hmm.
challenge for authority. The Bible speaks of it as Satan against God, and I
A
think
cosmic war.
yes, absolutely. Well, yes, and that's why I named my first book "The Cosmic Conspiracy," because it is a cosmic, all-encompassing, universal type war being fought here in a virtual war game, and that's Earth and our universe as we see it. It doesn't do any collateral damage in the real universe where the Creator lives, but it is resolved here using us. And I think those of us who are like avatars here, who side with God, will go on after this virtual reality is closed down to have everlasting life from that point forward in the real parallel world. In fact, this whole universe and the earth will be consumed, melted, destroyed, according to the book of the Revelation of John. But a new earth and a new heaven will replace it. So, yeah, that's where they're probably coming from, the majority of them. But we do have some of our own here on the planet.
With that in mind, do you think that there is life elsewhere in the universe, or is this some sort of like a holodeck? Chuck Missler has pointed to, and other people have pointed to the idea that um, the fabric of the universe may have error correcting software in it. And you just pointed it out when we read in Scripture that it'll be rolled up like a scroll, and a new heaven and earth created. It almost seems like, as vast as it is, it seems like it's dispensable. Your thoughts?
Well, I've noticed something in the scripture going through time on it about the difference between our universe and God's universe, where He dwells. And in the early days, in the time of Adam in the garden, He was able to walk with Adam and talk with him in the garden, and howdy, what you doing today, that kind of stuff. Person to person. Didn't hurt Adam, didn't hurt anything. Come the time of Noah, He actually talked to Noah and said, "Look, you need to prepare, do this. This is how you do it. Get the boat. All right, fine." Now, come to the time of Moses, moving forward in time. What happens to Moses? Moses wants to have a chat with whoever it is in that burning bush and that mountain that's talking to him. He says, "Look, can I see you?" I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And
Sure.
God says to him, "Look, Moses, I'd let you do that if such were possible, but if you were to see me face on right now, my presence would destroy you. So hide in the cleft of this mountain here. I'll hide you in this little cleft in the mountain to protect you,
Amazing.
and I'll put my image on this cloud outside so you can see my image." Now, that tells us that the energy density on God's presence was getting so great that standing next to a human, it would destroy him. In the ancient legends of the Tower of Babel and the ziggurats where the gods appeared, They appeared at the top of the ziggurat and had to spend time getting down to the bottom, several hours, to normalize their energy so that they didn't hurt anybody. When Moses came down off of the mountain after he'd been up there 40 days and nights with the Lord, his face glowed for like days. He had to cover his face because it would either frighten or blind the people
Sure.
around him. Now then, we don't hear about God appearing to people. So the energy disparity between our universe, the atoms in our universe, and his is getting so great. You can see that something is going on. Our universe is shutting down. The entropy is great.
Oh. So let me redirect the question again. Do
Okay,
you
sir.
believe that there's life elsewhere in the universe?
I did get kind of carried away there, didn't I?
That's all right.
Yes, it is possible that there's life on other planets. Jesus did mention before he left the place that he had sheep and other pastures to take care of. That doesn't bother me. There could be other life forms. But what is happening here on Earth, in our region, is being controlled by the Creator. And these various life forms that we've heard about, I don't know that they're really from where they say they are, but it's part of a great deception to impress mankind that they're not like bad guys, but just from a different part of the universe. It's a quite complex conspiracy to deceive us.
So, in other words, the key word, your word is deception. You feel that whoever these beings are, Jacques Vallée pens them and calls them messengers of deception. Would you hold to that same paradigm as Vallée?
I would say they are messengers of deception, yes. The Bible does warn that Satan himself will pose as a messenger of light. I mean, it's much like the movie and the TV series V. We're going to be
Sure.
approached by guys to help us, you know. We aim to please, bend over type stuff, you know. The the V series, to me, Kenneth Johnson did a wonderful job in that, producing a secular story about a Bible-based prophetic series of events where the aliens come looking like us, except they're really lizards with human skins on them.
Sure.
And you know, the blood of the hybrid baby in it, that dried blood is what runs them off and eventually defeats the deceptive ones. You can see all the parallels there if you go back and look at the movie, the V series. But yes, I think that what is happening now, this very year, 2013, is that we are seeing the groundwork laid for, uh, well, official disclosure, but really a disclosure to the masses. Okay, officialdom has known about this for at least since the end of World War II. But the intensity, the density of sightings around the world situation at Powder Keg Point does tell me that we are approaching in the next year, maybe less, full disclosure of the quote unquote alien presence, the deceivers.
We interviewed Stephen Bassett, head of a disclosure project, and talks about the truth embargo that our government basically has had on the entire extraterrestrial phenomena. You're talking about disclosure. I also agree with you that disclosure seems to be imminent. It's slowly kind of leaking. This is a major game changer when these guys really show up in mile-wide craft over the cities of the world. What do you think the reaction of the average Joe or Jane on the street will be?
Well, for many of them who are sci-fi fans, I don't know whether that'd be as much as 25%, but it will. Many of them will be saying, "Oh, look, they're here," you know, and they haven't wiped us out. I hope they're not wiping us out, and it'll be like Independence Day, 4th of July. They'll be standing on those mile-wide crafts, going, "Hey, here we are," you know, we come in peace, you know, and hope we're friends and that kind of stuff. But for the 75% of people that don't watch sci-fi, it will be utter heart-stopping business. They will be stunned mullets. They will be looking up. They'll be looking at each other. Some will panic and run for the hills or grab what they can from the stores and loot. And so there will be some disorder depending upon how the announcement is made. Now, if the announcement is made more subtly, like, okay, some country, you know, South American country, let's say, where Jaime is, maybe Mexico, says, okay, look, I've been contacted by them. They're going to make their presence known here. Don't panic. They're good guys. And it's a subtle, friendly revelation of them being here. And they're saying, look, we're going to fly some of our ships over your cities, but don't panic. You know, we're not going to hurt you. But we just didn't want to frighten you. That's why we've been so quiet for so many decades here. So that kind of an announcement or disclosure, people might react to without going into anarchy. The movies put it in an anarchistic way, though.
There seems to be a disparity between one group of UFO researchers who believe that when these entities show up, it's going to be a paradigm shift in human consciousness. In fact, they're embracing the so-called ET friendly scenario. And then another group, Jacques Vallée, I think for one of them, and I think you yourself was in this other group, is trying to warn and say, wait a minute, we don't know what these beings are, but they seem to be maybe too strong a word, malevolent. I know Dr. Jacobs, who we interviewed for the show, also believes that there's a real nefarious agenda here with these beings. What say you?
Well, I say that it is a nefarious agenda, just like the Bible warns of. Um, the how to say that? The thing is that they're coming very soon, and if we don't say what we're saying now to warn people about them being nefarious, bad guys, when
Right.
it does happen, it's too late for us, those of us who see it as a deception, to come out and say, oh, don't believe them, it's a deception, even though they're curing cancer, giving us free energy, and making a world government that there's no war and that kind of stuff. If you come out then, it's sour grapes. It won't work.
Sure.
We have to do that now so that the nefariousness of them, the evil intent of them, will be disseminated into the population, at least to a degree, by however far we can put these videos, to warn people, and not be fooled by this clever deception. I mean, I can't stress enough that movie V was so well done. It tells exactly what's going to happen to us.
Yeah, I concur. It's just I watched it like you and was sort of overwhelmed by what I was seeing. And it's a great way to educate and download the information to the masses. Let me ask you something. Do you think that good angels, the good guys, need craft to flip back and forth between the third heaven, the second heaven, and earth?
Hmm. Good question. I don't know that they need craft. I do know that there have been people who said they've seen angels around them. I think I've seen a living angel as well that helped me in a hospital many years ago. And I didn't see a craft, but they could have landed somewhere else and come in. Um, the Lord Himself ascended without a craft in front of the disciples. So no,
Sure.
I don't think they have to have a craft. It might be to advantage to carry various other things with them, to put here on the planet or to take away. I don't know, but um, look, I credit the Creator with incredible technology, and I don't think He needs to have a little flying saucer to do it. I think a lot of what we're seeing here, not all, but I'd say a lot of it, is equipment built here on Earth by Satan using the laboratories that we helped him set up.
Fascinating. Dr. David Jacobs talks about a breeding program, which he's been tracking now for literally decades.
Hmm.
And he speaks that there, or he tells of these hybrid beings from these entities, ET, extraterrestrials, and the women and men of Earth, has created some sort of a hybrid. And apparently, according to Jacobs, the breeding program seems to be finished where they can now integrate into the human population and pretty much go undetected. Have you heard anything that would lead credence to that? And what are your thoughts regarding this so-called hybrid, human-alien hybrid?
Well, I do think that Satan has been creating biological entities that were soulless, but basically very intelligent robots, cyborgs. And these are the gray critters, the little tiny ones, and the tall
Right.
grays. But we've also heard for 50 or 60 years now about the taller Nordic-looking beings, slightly reddish hair sometimes, but their skin has very fine scales on it, so in the sunlight it looks like an oil sheen, like a rainbow effect. Now, those beings, I don't know whether they're hybrids. I think those are probably the fallen ones who came with Satan when he was cast into this universe. To create an army, he has been forming hybrids with humans so that he can move his people, his hybrids, through our communities, I'm pretty sure, to establish control over the planet when he does take over. He's not really too interested in humans except as a resource for him to fight with Jesus when he comes for the great battle. we're pretty much fodder, and he treats us that way. Well, it says that in the book of Daniel. I did point to that in the Cosmic Conspiracy latest or final edition, that Daniel was told that this being and his man, the Antichrist, would treat humans as fodder. Yeah, and that's the bottom line. It does say that. Very fragile vessels to break, and to do away with. So the hybrids he's building would be something different that he would treat specially because they'd be part of the army he's using to fight Jesus. Now, he's having to make weapons that he can from our infrastructure here on this planet, and they're going to be substandard to what Jesus will have from the real universe out there. And that's the way I see it. These beings are probably, some of them are probably going to be housing disembodied spirits that will suddenly have a body. But the ones we've been seeing so far, the pure grays, these were, to me, soulless,
Yeah.
emotionless things. Okay, not entities. And that's why he's had this breeding program, is to try to somehow wrap the DNA that he can produce here around these disembodied spirits that side with him in the war. And it is a war.
So,
can we pause for one
yeah.
second? Sam, did you get that recent, the basketball player that said he was abducted while leaving Las Vegas?
And then he said he made it all up 3 days later.
Yeah,
No, I didn't hear about that.
What? It happened to him 3 times before he said that. And what was interesting is that the former defense minister of Canada said that he was aware of U.S. forces in Nevada working with the tall whites.
Yes, now that is an astounding revelation from someone that high in politics, even though it's in Canada. I mean, it's really, to me, as Ellie and I have been talking about here, it means this year, next year, disclosure is imminent when they start to leak unofficially and officially this kind of stuff. And astronauts on our side coming forward and saying, look, we've had to keep this a secret for so many years, but here's what was really happening. We did see him on the moon, blah, blah, blah. And it all points to we're there. We're almost going to see disclosure any tick of the clock. And I think this is going to be interesting in the Middle East. Israel is going to be the key to this.
I agree.
Okay, now they're surrounded by enemies, particularly Iran, and then of course in the Lebanon there are Hezbollah and others moving into there right on their northern border. They're going to have to do something to preemptively strike against those who are going to strike them, because Israel, as a landmass, is so tiny. A missile launched at its border would hit Jerusalem before you can even see it almost. So they're going to have to make a preemptive strike, which is going to cause the Russians, who are now on the island of Crete and various other places in the area, and in Lebanon itself, it's going to cause the Russians to trigger an attack on Israel. All these things are going to lead to what would appear to be to the people of the earth World War III and the destruction of the planet. And it's just like the day, the day the earth stood still movie. We're about to destroy ourselves, and in come the good guys.
That's right. I agree.
Some amazing forethought.
I totally concur with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think they'll come at a time of crisis, and they'll appear as our saviors. And Chris Putnam also weighed in on that and talked about that the Vatican sort of setting up for that alien savior to come and and save us. So it's a very complex scenario that we're looking at. One that's been, as you talked about in your book, Cosmic Conspiracy, one that's been played out literally for millennia, and continues to be played out. It's almost like the Earth is under quarantine, and right now this thing is ramping up to some sort of climax. What do you see a scenario, you just sort of touched on a little bit with Israel, but how do you see that scenario playing out that would involve Israel that would then be used as a springboard to full disclosure? How could that happen?
Well, we know that there have been a number of UFO sightings and filmings in Israel. Israel is the time clock that God uses for his prophetic calendar. Israel at the moment, as I said just a few minutes ago, does need to prepare for preemptive strike against Russians, against Iranians, against Hezbollah, against a Palestinian, fifth columnist within Israel itself. It is a horrible position to be in, but I can see that probably what's going to happen very shortly, and I mean like weeks to a few months here, is that Israel is going to strike at a nuclear facility in Iran. If not, it's going to strike at Damascus for bioweapons, mass destruction type weapons. It's already hit on the outskirts
It's
of
already hit him, right? Sure,
yeah.
once, actually
Now,
twice.
that's right. And so far, it hasn't irritated the world, press and powers that be and that kind of stuff. So what is happening is Israel's playing into the hands of the globalists. They want conflict so that they can have the thesis, antithesis, and then a synthesis between the two. The one world
Hegelian
government.
dialectic, right?
Absolutely. Now, Damascus is an interesting thing because the Bible does say that the city of Damascus will be destroyed, become a ruinous heap overnight. Damascus may go down at the hands of occupiers of Damascus already, of the terrorists. They may make a mistake with a nuclear facility or bomb there and blow themselves up. It doesn't matter whether they do it or whether Israel does it. The
Sure.
world's going to blame Israel. Okay, they'll say it's Israel because in a nuclear detonation like that, it's kind of hard to say, who lit the fuse. It's just they're done, and that's an excuse for Russia to be called in by Iran and by Syria. Look, help us. The Israelis have gone crazy. They've used nukes on us, whether they have or not. And at that point, Russia is going to mount an invasion in northern Israel. And the interesting thing I find about that invasion is that it does fail. The Russian army does fall in the mountains of Israel. All of them die. Well, two-thirds at least, maybe all, depending on how you read the translation. It takes 7 months to bury the dead from that. And they send out special teams, not just anybody, special teams to mark the dead bodies, as though there was something like a plague or something about them that was unsafe for the average person to go and bury. So it takes them 7 months of special teams to bury the dead bodies. It takes them 7 years to burn the weapons left over by the army that dies there on the mountains. It seems to me that what happens is, by the grace of God, some sort of a biological weapon of mass destruction is used by the Russians. They're getting ready to use it on Israel, and it backfires on them. And they are then killed by this biowarfare type mass destruction weapon. And that's why it takes so long to bury them. That's why Israel is able to survive it. At this point, the leaders of the world are going to say, don't let this escalate any further. This is a terrible thing. The United States, by the way, at that time, will probably have been neutered over here by fifth columnists or, like terrorists that are already ingrained in position here with some suitcase nukes or even with an EMP pulse. That's why Russia will think it's safe to move into northern Israel to invade Israel, because America won't be at their back. So America's weak. Russia's definitely going to be weak at that point. It leaves Germany and the European Confederation to put the world back together. And already the European Union, the Western European Union, has in place for the Secretary General suggestions or recommendations that he have the ability to raise army and to make war against whoever he needs to in the region. So you can see why it will be a time when the people of Earth are saying, what's going on, who's in charge, America's down, Russia's down, we're in trouble. That leaves China. So everybody is going to be at the razor edge there when the alien presence then says, look, stop now. Let us explain your situation. You're going to annihilate your planet, or we can help you and avoid that. I mean, you're doing it to yourself. It'll be a good argument. We come bearing peace, love, and harmony. We mean you no harm. And that's when people are going to be saying, hey, anybody that can avoid the war, bring peace, will accept it. And they'll rush into captivity. And the world is already being divided up by the Club of Rome, New World Order group, into 10 regions. And these regions are like the 10 toes that Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream talks about.
Sure.
Some will be clay and some will be aliens. And they will not mix the two. Some of the lands, those 10 toes of the earth, will be given over to Satan and those who follow him to do with as they please. You'd hope if you're here then that you're not one of those nations, because they'll be totally under quote-unquote alien satanic control, more so than now. And the thing that bothers me a lot about that is there's one mention in Scripture about Satan roaming the earth like a hungry lion, and then when you read in Daniel where it says it treats humans as fodder, I'm thinking, don't be too hungry. That's too close to the V scenario. Yeah. Well, giants were cannibals in the old
Sure,
days.
but definitely more, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it may be something like that again. Spooky thought.
Do you think that there could be benevolent alien life on some other planet? We've kind of touched on this earlier, that was created by God, that's inhabiting a part of the universe that maybe is coming here. I mean, that really makes the mix extremely complicated. But what are your thoughts on
Well,
intelligent, benevolent, created by a holy God that's out there somewhere that perhaps is visiting us also?
well, they may be here in small numbers observing, but I think if they are here or do come here, they will be on the Messiah Yeshua's side, and they will be in the host of the heavens that come to defeat Satan. Um, and for them to be here either as human-looking critters or as other forms that we don't see doesn't bother me. I mean, their presence would be only in, I'm sure, an observer position or perhaps some minor alteration of details here on the earth, but basically for them to be allowed in this region, it would be as they're part of the army that is going to defeat Satan.
My last question to you, Stan, and thanks so much for taking the time and coming on the record with us. The other side of the aisle, the New Agers, the those who follow the exopolitic movement, those calling for disclosure, they are literally ready to embrace this phenomena. They think it's benevolent, they think it's good, and meanwhile, there's a lot of people, many, I would say the majority of people on the planet have no idea what's going on. They're sort of asleep at the wheel. They look at the whole phenomenon and just go, it's a lot of hooey. It's swamp gas caught up in a thermal pocket reflecting the planet Venus in a weather balloon type scenario. So with that in mind, where do you stand on this? How would you address the sleeping masses, as it were?
Well, to the sleeping masses, I'd say wake up. We're giving you the wake up call, perhaps the last one you'll get before all this starts. And the most important thing in preparing for what is coming is preparing for the life that will come after this, whether you'll be part of it or not. And that's what the salvation doctrine is in the Bible. It simply is meaning you're going to be saved into life permanent after this if you side with the Creator and not with Satan. And if you don't side with the Creator, you're definitely siding with Satan, whether you do it or not, whether you wake up or not. Good works are not going to get you into the real universe. You got to be active, and accept the gift that was given to all of us by Jesus when he came down and as a hybrid being between God and man, and shed his blood for us, and then arose from the dead, and opened the gateway for us to God. And all we have to do, it's a very simple thing, is accept the gift and say, yeah, okay, I accept you as my doorway, my Savior, but it's my doorway into the parallel universe where God lives. That's the most important thing. Secondly to that, and this is to people who already are believers and followers of Yeshua, you need to prepare to endure for a little while when chaos hits the planet, food supplies are limited and that kind of stuff. Because as the 5 wise virgins did, you got to have oil in your lamp, you got to have the faith. Don't fall away from the faith, and have your provisions you need to endure until he comes for the church. Now, when that is a rapture. When it is, I won't argue here, but you know what my feelings are on that. It's very soon, but probably not before the Antichrist is revealed. Already, things are in progress in the Oslo Accords being revived. The Oslo Accords were drawn up during the time of Shimon Peres, with Nimrod Novik uh, at the meeting in Oslo. And Nimrod Novik is still around on the scene in the well, he's not the United States, he trained here, but he's still on the scene in Israel. And the period of the Oslo Accords temporary peace treaty is 7 years. It was 7 years when it was drafted, it's 7 years now when it's being revived. So all these things are playing and telling us we need to prepare spiritually and physically to endure on God's side until he makes it right here, until the planet is clean of all these bad critters and the war is over. And there's a time of 1,000 years where the people born onto the planet will be able to also make that option to have everlasting life after that. That's the important thing. I think those people should know. And here's a message I want to deliver to the New World Order. The most common thing that traitors forget, and that's the New World Order, the traitors to humanity, the Illuminati, they're traitors. The most common thing they forget is that when the new guy in town comes to take over, and they've been spying for him and working for him, they're the first ones to go because he can't trust them. So there are going to be a lot of people out here that are going to cheer that 75% that are asleep saying, the Illuminati are gone, the bankers are gone, ha! And so to the bankers, your days are numbered. Yeah.
Stan, thanks so much for coming on the record with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, LA.
Wow. That was great, guys.
That was great stuff, Stan. Really good. Really good stuff. Thank you.
Oh, Holly said she liked it. That's a good sign.
I got all caught up listening to you, even though I've heard it.
Oh, well, she's even listening to me, she said. That's, wow.
Did you hear the guy that was on Coast last night, Stan, that was talking about portals?
I went to sleep somewhere along there, but I heard the start of it. What did he say about the portals?
He was saying that portals are appearing all over the world, specifically in the South Pacific and also in the Atlantic, and that he had a story of a guy who had gone through one and lived in another dimension for a few months and then came back. So he was postulating that portals like that might actually be used during the rapture.
Well,
I just thought it was interesting that maybe there's a scientific explanation to some of these things we read about.
Well, they've got to get them out of here in a hurry. Got to get all the church and the rapture out of here in a hurry. So it certainly would not conflict with that argument. How these portals that they're talking about, were they at ground level in the air on a mountain?
They're in the air, and they talk about this green fog appearing. And if you walk through it, you enter one.
Ah, like in World War I, where that.
Talk about like at the Bermuda Triangle and those different.
It's very much like that, and it's also a lot like what happened at the Philadelphia experiment.
Yes.
That kind of thing, but I've been getting pictures. I don't know if you know Larry Taylor.
Yeah.
From Oklahoma. He's been sending me pictures that he's been taking of craft in his backyard.
I've seen some of them, yeah.
He sent me one yesterday where it looks like this ship is going through a hole in space.
Dang.
Just above his backyard. He thought it was entering or exiting a portal. And then when I was shooting a segment for Watchers on Father's Day, because that's what I wanted to do on my day, was go to Malibu and get some really cool driving shots that I could fold into the show. I was shooting on my little Hero 2 GoPro camera, and I didn't see anything in the sky the whole time I was shooting, but when I got home, there was a ball of light hanging over Pacific Coast Highway, and it was in every southern-facing shot, and it moved with the mountains. It went behind the clouds at a certain point, so I knew it wasn't a lens flare or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, yeah.
The physical object. So I thought, I wonder if I picked up an infrared signature from a ship, and this little camera's actually able to capture that frequency of light. So I came home and I hooked up, I took my Sony remote out and shot it into the lens, and sure enough, it lit up bright blue. So I think I picked up something, and it was up there a long time. It was like watching me.
Well, this green fog thing is, as I say, it goes back as far as World War I with that whole regiment, I think it was, or battalion, I forget what they called it, but a whole army walked into the green fog and were never seen again.
Right.
Right. The
There's
gateway.
a Bermuda Triangle thing.
Yeah, Bermuda Triangle thing. Yeah, exactly, where it screws up the instruments and everything else.
And is there
Hold
something
on.
significant about it being a green fog? Because everybody I've ever heard on Coast talk about this, the Philadelphia experiment, they all talk about being a green fog.
Well, the green fog is probably due to the ionization of the nitrogen, to a second level ionization of nitrogen.
Of course, why not?
I know. You would have thought of it eventually. Yeah, Holly was just wondering why all the people that see these fogs or clouds why it's green, And I'm pretty certain because of the nitrogen presence that the nitrogen gets ionized and produces that green glow. Look at meteors that come in when you see them. They're not red or blue, they're greenish.
Right.
You know, and that's because they're ionizing the air around them, which is, 79% nitrogen.
I was right next to one as it fell into the Pacific Ocean a few months ago, and that's what it looked like. It was kind of an aquamarine color.
Did you, because it was coming in so fast, you saw it before you heard it, right?
I didn't hear it, but I saw this really bright flash, and then I saw a green trail, and I was driving on PCH, and this thing fell almost vertically straight down into the ocean behind some buildings, so I couldn't really see it splash.
Oh, yeah.
But it was very cool looking.
Well, back when I was in Australia, I think it was back in about 93 or so, somewhere back in then. I had my office was separate from the house. It was up in the back of the property, and I'd been working late. It was about 2 in the morning, dark still, nice starlit night. I closed down the office and was heading back to the house, and I stopped by a tree and I looked up and I'm thinking, you know, am I just talking to the air when I talk to you, God, or are you really there? Okay?
Yeah, right.
And with that, off to my left over the house, way out there in the street, I saw some kids playing with a Roman candle, I thought, because there was this green, you know, light coming up in the sky and it had a little trail behind it. And
Right.
suddenly I realized, holy cow, that's no kids in the street, that's no Roman candle, that's a meteor heading my way, and that's the trail behind it. And it got bigger and
Well,
bigger and bigger, and it was so bright and so green and so close that it was lighting up the outside like the Martians had landed. My daughter told me
Yeah.
that later. She was awakened by the green light because everything was green. That's
well,
how close it was.
Wow.
And it came over my head and fell into the forest behind me and broke into 4 pieces. We
Did
found
it
out
make a
later.
sound?
And at that point, I turned around, looked back up, and I said, "Hey, right, God, you and me."
Did you see that mighty boom that it
Did it
was?
make
Oh,
a noise?
yeah. Well, oh yeah, and yeah, Holly just reminded me. I talked to God right after that, but there were booms, not one sonic boom, but multiple. As it was going so hypersonic, it passed through several um, uh, sound barriers, and you could hear it all down the coast as the booms moved toward me. There were dogs and neighborhoods waking up and lights coming on as it passed over, and the newspaper reported on it. It was a big deal.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
that was the time that I thought, right, I'm not ever going to ask the question again, Lord. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I mean, it was like what was it, the John Lynch meteor that broke up into pieces, and
yeah, it was amazing.
all those pieces made individual sounds. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Went on for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that could happen too because it was leaving a kind of raggedy trail behind it of little pieces that I could see, and it flew right
Yeah,
overhead. I mean, it was just silent when it first passed over, and
sure.
it was probably one of the most spectacular astronomical sights I've ever personally
Wow.
witnessed.
Hey, did you see that
Uh,
thing that they
Hold on.
said there was some big asteroid that just flew by Earth? It was like last night or night before, and it was previously undiscovered. It was a close
Stop
shave,
that.
and they
Oh,
just happened to find it at the
you know,
time.
Holly's reminding me in the last couple of days there's been an asteroid fly so close to the Earth that it was a close shave previously uncatalogued in the last 2 days sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. Have you
Where
got that up
was?
on the website at all? Or
No, but I'm gonna go look for it because
she's
I
going to go
can't
look for it,
remember
she
it.
said. But
Yeah.
yeah.
If you want, I'll send you the show from Coast last night, and we'll listen to it.
Oh, Holly's got it. She's got it.
I heard part of it. We'll listen
She
to it.
said she heard part of it more than I did, and we'll replay it in a minute.
Hours 2 and 3 are the best ones.
2 and 3. All right.
Really looking forward to seeing you and and just talking shop. I mean, you and I are so much on the same page. It's like when I listen to you, it's just like, oh my gosh, this is a master recording.
I
It's just
tell you
amazing.
what, we could certainly bend a few ears, couldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I hope that W7 gets good exposure, wide exposure before the game is called, because I do think that we're going to lose the access to the public over the internet freely anyway. I think
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And when that happens, all the information shut down.
that's it. It'll be by the underground circulating it, I guess, and
Yeah.
maybe mailing DVDs or flash drives back and forth. Flash drives might be a good investment for most of us, actually. To
Stan, have you seen the movie The Number Station?
No, is that something new?
It came out. It might have been 2012, but
Oh, yeah.
it was all about the shortwave broadcast where a woman just sitting there and going 3, 7, 2, 9, and she's saying, and you hear this all the time in shortwave, and they're broadcasting kits basically all over the world for these black ops forces, and they're decoded. But it got me thinking again of the viability of shortwave radio for communication again.
Well, certainly a number of the guys here in our ham club here in town feel the same thing. Sadly, there's only a couple of them who got rigs powerful enough to not rely on the repeaters up on Cheyenne Mountain to get out of here.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that shortwave will be useful to a point until it's jammed, or if we have an EMP, it'll only be the ones that survive that can broadcast or receive.
Well, yeah, that's my greatest fear is the EMP. I mean, it's so easy to do, and it's some of these third world guys. It's so that's all you got to do is launch one over the heartland, and we're back in the Stone Age.
I know, and that would neuter America as far as a viable force to hit the Russians.
I agree.
Throw us into chaos, and certainly then only the military and people that had hardened equipment would be in charge.
That's it. Scary stuff.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
I'll see you in Colorado in a couple of days.
All right, guys. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Dan.
Live long and prosper.
Yes, live long and prosper. I can almost do it. There we go. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, that's it. I usually have to do that.
You know what this was, right?
Well, yeah, it's the sheen.
Yeah.
The rabbis use it.
Why they do that as a praise to God.
I love it. It's so cool.
Well, the high priest does that on when he's in front of the congregation. Leonard Nimoy told about that. That's where he got the idea for it. Was the sign of the sheen over the congregation.
Pretty
And
cool.
you're not supposed to be looking, but he did.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Take care. Bye, Holly.
Bye.
She says bye.
Yes.